This lecture explains about named arguments and how to use it. Named arguments is one of the newly introduced features of C# 4.0. While calling the method, whenever you supply the value based on the parameter name, it is called as named argument. So in real-time projects, sometimes you may have methods with so many number of parameters and different types of parameters. So while calling the method, you are supplying different types of values such as primitive values, non-primitive values, that means reference variables, etc. So if the number of parameters increase, it may be confusion for the method caller which argument value goes to which parameter. By default, argument values will be assigned into the parameters based on the sequence. That is, first argument value will be assigned to the first parameter, second argument value will be assigned to the second parameter, and so on. But by just looking at the code, it will be difficult to understand which argument goes to which parameter. This problem is solved by named arguments, because you will supply the value based on the parameter name. So first you will write the parameter name, then value. So it is guaranteed that this particular value will be passed to the particular parameter. In this case, the order or sequence of parameters doesn't matter because you supply the values based on the parameter names rather than their sequence. So this will be useful in real-time projects whenever you have a method with large number of parameters and you want to improve the readability of the program. That means any developer should be able to understand your code easily. By just looking at the code, he should be able to understand all the arguments and respective parameters. But however, it is not required to use the named arguments if the method has a limited number of parameters, that is either 1 or 2. But if the method has too many number of parameters, that too of reference type, in that case the named parameters will be really useful. Here the rule is that if the left-hand side parameter is passed through named argument, that means you are writing the parameter name then value. All subsequent parameters also must be passed through named arguments only. They cannot be passed without named argument. For example, there is a method with two parameters, that is x and y. Whenever you supply the value of x as a named argument, the subsequent parameter, that is y, must be passed through named argument only. It cannot be passed without the parameter name. But you must supply the values for all the parameters. You cannot skip any one. Of course, if the method has a default value, it is an optional parameter. So you may or may not supply the value for the parameters that have default values. Suppose you have a method called calculateTags and it has a parameter called %. And come to the program.cs. So while calling the calculateTags method, you are supplying the value, that is 9.2. So to which parameter you are supplying the value? It is not self-explanatory, right? So by just looking at this code, suddenly any developer cannot guess to which parameter you are supplying the value. So that is the reason, in order to improve the readability of the program, I am adding the parameter name at the left-hand side, then then the actual value can be passed. So it is very readable and understandable that this value 9.2 is being passed to the parameter called %. This concept will be useful if the method has so many number of parameters, that means more than 3. But the named arguments is not having any impact in the output. The output is same because it is only about specifying the parameter name while calling the method, but the method executes in the normal way as it before, so there is no any difference in the output. And there is no any difference in the performance also, because it is just information to the developer which value is being passed to which parameter. It has nothing to do with the performance, right? So in real-time projects, when you have a method with too many number of parameters, while calling such methods, it is better to use the named arguments, but it is not compulsory. This is all about named arguments in C#.